Okay, welcome back. This is a new series called The Three Lost Luciferian Conflicts. And I'm going to start with a quotation from Emmanuel Rodriguez. And that quotation was Manuel Rodriguez in 1997, May 7th, wrote or commented on Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 uh, to 12, and that is from the Biblical Research Institute. He says, and I quote, a reading of chapter 12, verses 1 to 6 and 13 to 17 could easily be suggested that verses 7 to 12 is parenthetical. Verse 13 picks up the narrative where it left off in verse 6. Yet the transitional sentence, and when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, in verse 13, indicates that verses 7 to 12 have been nicely integrated into the flow of ideas of the chapter. They are a development of verses 4 and 5, in which the dragon is described as trying to destroy the Messiah at his birth. The idea of a conflict is already present. So that was written in 1997. And so basing on that and my observation of Revelation 12, I divided the chapter into these particular parts, about three according to that quotation. Verses 1 to 6, which shows the basic message is about the parties that are involved in the great controversy. And then verses 7 to 12, how and why the devil and his angels were cast out of heaven and where they found refuge, the stages in casting out onto the earth. And then verse 13 to 17, what the devil does when cast onto the earth, knowing he has a short time left. So you can take time to read through those verses. Uh, let's go to Isaiah chapter 14. Isaiah 14 and verse 12. Isaiah 14 verse 12 up to verse 15. When you read through those verses, they show the conflict or the covetousness that develops in the heart of Lucifer, but they also mention lots of things. How art thou fallen, that is verse 12, from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Then verse 15 finishes up with, Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. If you look at that particular reading we've taken from Isaiah 14, verse 12 to 15, and you compare it a little with Revelation chapter 12, Revelation 12, verse 7 to 12. I'll read verse 7 to 12. It says, And there was war in heaven, Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Then verse 10 says, And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto the death. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having a great wrath, because he knoweth, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So if you look at those verses, there is some similarities in language. For instance, we noted in Isaiah 14, the conclusion was in verse 15, yet thou shalt be brought down to the sides of the north, to the sides of the pit. But then it says in verse 12, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nation. Those two phrases, cut down to the ground, weakening the nations, all seem implied and all seem related to the concepts that are established in Revelation 12, verse 7 to 12, verse 7 to 15, actually, to 12, such as the dragon and his angels, the devil and his angels being cast down to the earth, and also it's it is him and his angels that did weaken the nation or deceive the whole world. So those concepts are similar, but in Isaiah 14 something is established which tries to show what was in the heart of Lucifer. He says he will exalt his throne above the stars of God. He will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. He will be like the Most High. Fortunately enough, when finishing up that segment, Isaiah helps us, lets us know that at the end of it all, the dragon or Satan or Lucifer will be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. That is in Isaiah 14, verse 15. In uh, when we seek to understand what the basis of this conflict was that developed up in Lucifer's heart, we may find knowledge from the writings of Ellen White in volume 7 of the Bible Commentary, page 972, and paragraph 6, that was published in 1957. She wrote, opposition to the law of God had its beginning in the courts of heaven, with Lucifer, the covering cherub. Satan determined to be first in the councils of heaven and equal with God. Then she continues to say, when Satan had succeeded in winning many angels to his side, he took his cause to God, representing that it was the desire of the angels that he occupy the position that Christ held. So there is a conflict here, and the conflict is about the position Christ held. Satan wanted to be equal with God, and that means that Christ had that position. Christ was equal with God. The equality with God was with Michael. Michael essentially means one who is what God is. And when Christ came to the earth, he was called Emmanuel, which means God with us, essentially one in whom God dwells. If you look at Colossians, let's just go there. Colossians chapter 2, verse 9. Colossians 2:9 says, for, talking about Christ, for in him dwelleth all the fullness of the Godhead bodily. So this is where the conflict is established. Who should be equal with God? However, the scriptures present several cases, or several examples in which talking about the pre-incarnated Christ to have been equal with God. The pre-incarnated Christ is understood as Michael, the archangel. He was equal with God. For instance, if we go to John chapter 1, the Gospel of John chapter 1, and basically verse 1 and 2, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. So the Word was with God. The Word at the same time was God. And if we want to understand who that Word is, in verse 14 it says, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. So that establishes that Christ, the Word, was with God, was God, in other words, was equal to God. For another verse, we can look at Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 and 6. Philippians 2, verses 5 and 6. It says, "Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God." So it was okay. It was okay with God and with Christ to be equals. Other texts such as Proverbs 8:22 to 31, Isaiah 9, 9 verse 6, 1 Timothy 3:16, Titus 2:13, Hebrews 1:8 to 13, Colossians 1:15 to 16, and others. All these try to establish that Christ was equal, or Christ is equal with God. And it is this equality that Lucifer wanted and convinced some angels that God allowing it with Christ was at fault, and so were his judgments, and also that Christ was not qualified to be rightfully equal with God. Whatever basis Lucifer used to come to such noxious conclusions, none can tell. But it is clear that his heart was filled with covetousness. So, what have we done here? We've tried to bring out kind of an introduction to what we are going to expound more, and that is the primeval conflict between God and Christ. This is our first part, the first conflict of the three lost Luciferian conflicts, and this is its introduction. In the introduction, what have we established? The main argument, the main battle reason was Lucifer wanted to be equal with God, and that equality was with Christ, and so he wanted to take that equality. He wanted to take the position of Christ. But we shall go on to establish this conflict more and more in the next episodes. Thank you. May God bless you.